and the Masters of the Universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. Our friends, the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
Hello, this is OptimusSolo, and welcome to the first chapter in Tales of Eternia. With me for this journey into the Masters of the Universe franchise is none other than my partner in crime, TFG1Mike himself. Are you ready for the powers of Grayskull, sir?
Oh yes, I think everyone has been waiting and ready for this since we premiered episode 0 last year. I know a buddy of mine on Twitter, Count Marzo, he's like, you guys are gonna make us wait a whole year. Come on.
I do want to say a few things as a disclaimer. I mean, we might have mentioned some of it in episode 0, but seeing that you
Right.
just reminded everybody
It's
that
so
was like a
long
year
ago,
ago,
yeah.
I want to throw a couple things out there. Number one, hopefully this will start to shed a little bit of the belief out there that we are first, foremost, and only Transformer fans. Yes, I know your name is TFG1Mike and my name is OptimusSolo, and they both have Transformers references. Fine. All right. But I think the reason we get that rap is because the first franchise we decided to tackle in our first, your first podcast was Transformers related. That was the first franchise we tackled. There's a lot of different series, so it took a long time to cover them all. But that does not necessarily mean that we are only Transformers fans. I have just as much love for Transformers franchise as I do G.I. Joe franchise, as I do the He-Man franchise, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise. So we're not like Transformers fanboys. We are fanboys of all of it.
Yeah.
So that's.
And I even said in episode 0, I even said that I was a He-Man fan way before I was a Transformers fan as a kid.
Yeah, as was I. And this is going to be a cool little thing. I mean, we've already ventured off of the Transformers track with our Mass Mayhem podcast, and this is just the reason I'm a little bit more even excited for this, besides the obvious. I'm talking about Mask versus He-Man here, but is because this is not just a one-show thing. This is like what we did with Transformers, where we really get to not just delve into this show, but the entire franchise of shows. And it'll be a long, drawn-out process that should be an enjoyable journny. And
well, except for one piece of
we'll
shit.
see how that happens, how that goes along. There was a couple other things I wanted to mention. As far, I don't know about the way you're tackling this, but the way I'm tackling this, and it's important for the viewers to realize this.
Listeners.
Or the listeners. I always want to say viewers. But the listeners, I thought of this phrase earlier, and I know it's an oxymoron, and people will be like, that makes no sense. But the way I am viewing these episodes, listen carefully, I am viewing these as if I was watching these episodes for the first time again. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not ignorant to the fact that I've seen all these episodes at some point in my childhood or, growing up. And I know I can't erase completely the fact that I know of the franchise, that I've seen the various series, that I know the characters, that I know what is to come, et cetera, et cetera. But I am still going to make my best effort, even though acknowledging that I've seen it all before and that it was part of my childhood, that I'm trying to make my best effort to watch these as if I was watching them for the first time again, and from that outlook. Like, I'm trying to say, like, I know I'm an adult and I'm not looking at this through kids' eyes, but if this was someone who was watching it for the first time, how would things make sense? How would things not make sense?
Right.
Because we do delve into stuff, we do dissect stuff, we are critical. This is not just an episode.
Gush fest.
It's not our
It,
episode just reflecting on our thoughts of He-Man. That was what we did in Tooncast.
right.
This is the purpose of this is to really dissect it so that if people are watching through these episodes again, they can have more than just the episode. They can watch the episode and they can listen to us. They can be with us and part of the discussion, debating things, dissecting what's good, what's bad, what's wrong, what's right.
Right.
And I'm trying to do that from a standpoint of I have to try to take myself back to before I knew anything so I can say, would this make sense for someone watching it for the first time?
Right.
So that's why I'm saying it's like watching it for the first time again.
Right. And for me, as I said, in the episode 0, I vaguely like I remember the overall mythos. I remember watching the cartoon, but I don't remember every specific detail. I remember certain moments of the series, but I don't remember every single plot line. When I have all 4 of the volume BCI sets that make up the Snake Mountain Castle Grayskull how's it stupid thing called mural. Um, when you put them side by side, I have all 4 of the original DVD sets, and it's very rare that I go back and watch episodes, and especially now since Kevin and I Kevin brought the idea to me, and we've launched this series of Masters of the Universe podcasts. I did not want to go back before we even started, production on this podcast to watch them beforehand, to watch them so far in advance that I would be like, if I had to rewatch it, it's like, ugh.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm coming from 2 aspects. I'm coming from the point of nostalgia of certain moments in the series, like the first transformation and stuff like that. But as far as the rest of it, I am coming in at it as like I haven't seen it in years.
yeah, and I mean, I saw it all as a kid, and I've seen it in bits and pieces because when it came out on DVD, I got the DVD. I probably watched a handful of episodes, 5 or 6, but that's been some years ago. I probably watched some more, here and there with friends. But like you, I've been holding off. I mean, this idea is not a new idea. This idea has been around. How many years have we had this idea now of doing this? At least
At least a year and a
at least a
half.
year and a half,
I
2 years.
we,
So.
we, we, we recorded episode 0 last October,
And the
so
episode came, or the idea for it obviously came before that. So it's been at
yeah,
least a couple years since I've even watched an episode, because I was
right.
like you holding off because I knew I was going to be watching them all, straight through. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to put that out there so people can see where we're coming from.
Yep, exactly.
Anything else before we move on, sir?
Um, I agree with pretty much everything that we've said, and people that have listened to our review shows before know what to expect from us. For new listeners, bear with us.
Well,
We are going to point out stuff we love. We are going to also nitpick the hell out of the shows, not just He-Man 83, but She-Ra, that crappy New Adventure stuff, and of course 2002 when we get to that. But you know,
I,
we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't want to do it. If we didn't want to sit down each week and
and
talk
if we didn't
about
love
it.
this franchise and this series, and
Exactly.
for anybody that ever comes up with a comment of, stop complaining it's a cartoon or stop being critical, it was a cartoon, we will reference you back to this episode. And
Yes.
you will have to listen to this and then realize that we've already told you that's what we're going to do. So if you don't like that, too bad. Also, if you have watched or I'm going to keep saying watched and viewed, if you have listened to any of the Transformers review podcasts, and you have not listened to the Mass Mayhem podcast, we have changed things a little bit with how we're doing these couple things, so you can expect a little bit different format than what we used on the Transformers review shows, slightly tweaked and adjusted to fit the Masters of the Universe franchise and world. So hopefully you will get used to that because it's a format that I think works pretty well.
It does. It does.
So, in this episode of Tales of Eternia, we'll be giving you our thoughts on episode 1. And before I even name the episode and have people go crazy, I remembered the other thing that we want to throw out there, which is we will be reviewing these episodes. Like I said, I wanted it to be as close as possible to as if you were watching them live as a kid again. So we are reviewing them in the episode in which they actually aired on TV. That is, I believe, the order that they appear in at least one of the versions of the DVD releases. But it is not the order that they were made. It's not the production order. It is the air date order. This is how you would have seen them if you were watching as a kid. So we are doing it that way on purpose. So we're going to give you our thoughts on episode 1, which for this sake would be Diamond Ray of Disappearance, episode 2, which would be Teela's Quest, and episode 3, Colossor Awakes. So we hope you're ready, because it's time to travel back to Eternia.
You don't recognize it, do you, Beast Man? In this box lies the lost Diamond Ray of Disappearance.
The Diamond Ray? But that makes those who see it.
I know what it does, Furface. Now activate the transport beam.
As you wish, Skeletor.
I'll call our warriors from around the universe and bring them here to Snake Mountain. I, Skeletor, command you, my warriors. Merman, O Lord of Water, master of fish, lakes, and streams, return to Snake Mountain. Evil Lyn, sorceress of night, I, Skeletor, command you to return immediately. Triclops, master of vision, I will need your gamma vision, which can see around solid objects. Trapjaw, wizard of weapons. Return with your deadly arsenal and your vicious steel jaw. Excellent.
Skeletor, why have you summoned us here?
At last I have the means to conquer Eternia and crush He-Man once and for all.
We've all heard that before, Skeletor. And He-Man has stopped us each time.
But this time, I have something special. The Diamond Ray of Disappearance.
And just what is so special about this Diamond Ray?
I'll show you. Do I have a volunteer? No? A wise choice, if not a brave one. Watch what happens to any living being who sees the Diamond Ray.
It's gone! The creature vanished!
Yes, exiled into another dimension. The same fate awaits all who stand in my way, especially He-Man. Now, here is what we will do.
Come on, Battle Cat. We're about to clean house.
He-Man! No! Wait!
Orko, what happened at the palace?
Skeletor's taken over. He made your parents disappear. Man-at-Arms and the sorceress, too.
We have to rescue them. Tell me exactly what Skeletor did.
He shined this light on them, and they just disappeared.
The lost Diamond of Disappearance. He must have found it.
What are we going to do?
You find Teela and her guards. Tell her to wait in the woods near Castle Grayskull. See if you can find Ram Man and Stratos.
What about you?
Only the sorceress would know of a way to reverse the diamond's effects. And there's only one place where I may be able to communicate with her now. Castle Grayskull.
All right, starting with episode 1, the Diamond Ray of Disappearance, which aired, according to my sources, it was September 5th, 1983. It could have been various dates in 1983, but that's the year it aired at least. And episode 1 was written by one named Robbie London. Now, the reason we're going to bring up writers for each of these episodes, for me personally, is I like to see if there's trends, if there's certain writers who I end up liking their episodes more than other writers. I find way too often that writers of cartoon shows from our past all get lumped in as these phenomenal writers or as these nostalgic like superstars because they wrote for He-Man or they wrote for Transformers, when in essence some of the writers for these shows suck and some of the writers are good. So the reason that we're including it in our plot synopsis for each episode is so I can try to like keep track of which writers I think were good and which writers I think were bad, and to see if there was, trends or stuff like that.
And partially it's catching up because we forgot to do it in Mass Mayhem.
We did do that. It's a little harder for that, but we will be good because it's very easy since they list the writers very clearly on all of these episodes. So we're starting with a Robbie London episode, Diamond Ray of Disappearance. The first person we see in this franchise and in this series is Skeletor. He calls for his warriors. Well, it's Skeletor and Beastman, I should say. It shows them both kind of conversing at Snake Mountain, and he calls for his warriors from around the world to come to him, and we are introduced to his evil warriors, which include Evil Lyn at this point, Merman, Triclops, and Trapjaw. So he brings them to the table like they're having a Last Supper. And Skeletor reveals the power of this thing that he has come into possession of, which is the Diamond Ray of Disappearance. Then we shift to the palace, and we see the residents of the palace and Orko performing a bad magic trick. So in this situation, we're introduced to Orko, Man-at-Arms, Teela, Prince Adam, King Randor, and Queen Marlena, and Cringer. Then we see Trapjaw attack the palace, and Prince Adam and Cringer quickly decide that it's time to make their transformation, which is the first time that we see the emergence of He-Man and Battle Cat.
Now, I do have to interrupt you just briefly here, because I know what they did to give the backstory of this royal family and everything else with, Secret of the Sword and all that stuff, but you would think that if you're premiering a cartoon, and I know He-Man was not big on continuity, you would think that they would give some sort of original backstory as to how Prince Adam became He-Man.
Yeah, I have something about that I'll bring up later, too, because we'll definitely touch on that again. Teela and the guards are going to fight back, obviously, when Trapjaw is attacking the palace.
Yeah.
Which we find out is a diversion. Skeletor kind of reveals to us that was a diversion strategy to get Teela and the guards and everybody away from the palace so that he could continue with his plan. He-Man, meanwhile, is helping Teela, and they both kind of figure out that they've been duped, and so they head back to go to the palace to make sure it's okay. We also have an appearance then of the Sorceress, makes her first appearance of the series. And it's also somewhat revealed to us that apparently only Man-at-Arms and Orko, and I guess we can assume at that point He-Man, obviously, are aware that the Sorceress is also the bird. So that's kind of like a little hidden thing because it's shown that Man-at-Arms and Orko are the only ones that recognize the bird form of the Sorceress. Skeletor and the Warriors, along with some of Hordak's droids, Skeletor's robot knights, show up. Skeletor uses the Diamond Ray on the people at the palace, and they all disappear. Except for Orko, who fills in He-Man on what had just happened. He-Man travels to Castle Grayskull to speak with the Sorceress to figure out what he needs to do. Sorceress tells him that he has to crush the diamond to restore all those that were basically vanished by the diamond's ray. Skeletor comes to Grayskull to take it over. We kind of get the gist here that the Grayskull is a source or a goal for Skeletor. It's something that he wants. There's something about Castle Grayskull that he wants to control. His evil warriors can't open the door until he helps them, and when he helps them open the door, He-Man is standing on Battlecat there waiting for them. Meanwhile, Teela rejoins us, and this time is alongside Ram Man and Stratos, so they make their first appearance into the series. So she found them out in the woods. He-Man throws the warriors around like ragdolls, showing off his strength. Skeletor tries to shoot He-Man with the Diamond Ray of Disappearance. He-Man uses his sword to reflect the ray. Skeletor then drops the diamond, but he does create a Rockman for He-Man to fight with to try to distract him. He-Man destroys that pretty quickly and then goes after the diamond that has fallen down into a crevice in the ground there. And he then crushes it, which brings the people back who had been vanished. So that is basically how the story ends. Skeletor flees, and we have the obviously very cliche but normal strategy where the bad guys flee and will live to fight another day.
Yes.
We've already mentioned everybody that appeared as far as the bad guys and the Master, so a lot of people are introduced in this episode. And I'll let you talk real quick before we go to the next point about the plot in general, or the cast of characters that we see so far.
The only plot note I had written down is, and for you fans, listeners that hopefully would be listening to Mass Mayhem, I have a feeling that even Orko's clumsiness, he is more competent than Scott and T-Bitch.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I'll give you that. He is more competent than him, but I don't find any of them annoying, which a lot of people do.
As far as the overall plot, like I said before when I interrupted Kevin, I just wish that we had more of a... I understand this show is not continuity driven. I get that. It's one-off episodes or it's, mini movies or whatever else, but I just wish that the first episode was something more character driven to the royal family and all that.
I think, in my opinion of it, is what they do. They use this first episode obviously as introduction of a lot of characters.
Right.
So for me, the plot of this first episode, the Diamond Ray of Disappearance is simply a throwaway tool here that they're going to use to throw a quick story together, but in a way that's going to allow them to introduce a variety of characters, and you're going to have enough to try to take in with all the different characters and what's going on and why it's going on and how it's going on, that I'm glad that the storyline wasn't too complex. Because it would have been too much for someone to take in, as well as learning all the characters and trying to wrap your mind around what is going on, what's the premise of this overall series. Because even though we say, it's not necessarily continuity-based, there is a loose continuity, there is a universe that exists, there is things that have to fall into place and make sense within that universe. Right. So there is some loose continuity there. I think what they did, in my opinion, is it's almost like they didn't have enough time for a backstory.
Yeah.
Instead,
I guess essentially the introduction to the show.
I think they used the introduction theme song and the intro as a way to bypass having to do the origin story.
Yeah.
Which I'm with you. I think I prefer origin stories and backstories, and I wish there would have been like one episode before this. I think this is a great episode to introduce everybody in this world, but it would have been cool to have one episode focusing on how Prince Adam learned about being He-Man, and just I think one episode where it just would have been He-Man, Orko, Man-at-Arms, and the Sorceress. Yeah. Like basically those four characters, and we really learn about why those are the only people that know, why he where he finds the sword, etc., how that ties in together. Just have one episode with those four, and then this would have been a perfect second episode. Because it's like, now that you know that, here's all the other characters, and here's where we stand today.
Yeah. And I will say, and I'm jumping way ahead here, I know I am, so forgive me here. I do remember an episode down the line in this series where he gives the power back, and he essentially throws the sword into the abyss of Grayskull. So, I mean...
Since you bring that up, though, I do have to mention, for those listening to us and those fans, and especially the super fans out there of the franchise, at least for me, please, can I request that you do not talk about episodes we're not to yet in the comments on our webpage and stuff like that.
Don't jump ahead. If you're going to watch and listen along with us,
don't say, well, that's because you guys aren't taking into account something that happens 10 episodes later.
Right.
First of all, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
Second of all, remember, we're watching this as if we haven't seen those episodes yet. A kid would not know what happens 10 episodes from now.
Yeah.
So please take
like I said in the intro to the podcast, I remember certain bits and beats of the series, and that was just one of those ones that I do remember. But you're right. I mean, the overall plot, it would have been nice, even if it was just, even not even a full episode, but something,
Yeah, I mean, if you could go back and do it perfectly right, or do like a reimagining or something, the perfect formula is to have an episode that mainly features those four first. And then you start introducing the cast of characters that surround these four.
Right.
And then, of course, at the end of any 80s cartoon worth its sugar, you're going to get your little PSA-style lesson. So our lesson from Eternia for this episode comes from He-Man, and it's directly tied to the actual episode, because they say, as you saw with so-and-so in this episode, and the idea is here to work for what you want, and do not try to cut corners and get things the fast way like Skeletor did.
Yeah.
I will say, even though it's kind of a generic message, I do like the fact that it was directly tied to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, they do... That's the difference between... And again, we are going to compare these because both of these podcasts will hopefully be in production consistently, which they will, most likely. As soon as... Anyway, between Mask Mayhem and Tales of Eternia, over in Mask, their PSAs have nothing to do with
which is how most
their episodes whatsoever. Whereas in He-Man, almost every PSA I have seen to this point has something directly related to, in today's episode, boys and girls, Orko learned, etc., etc., etc. Or in today's episode, Beastman learned, etc.
It's much more. It's when you do it the other way, which is the way most cartoons did, is they just threw something together at the end, like Mask did. Transformers did that most of the time, and other shows that inserted PSAs from time to time, G.I. Joe, etc. It's too obvious to a kid that that's what they're doing.
Right.
And I think it's much easier to actually get the message to the kid in disguise doing it this way.
Yeah.
Because you think it's still kind of part of the episode and they're just explaining things, and then you're like, oh, you buy into that. It's not like, oh, here's the moment where they're going to give me some line of crap about, plugging something into an electric outlet when you're standing in the shower.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's...
I could be wrong about this, but I think that was a mandate that Lou Scheimer had, that he wanted to have almost every 80s cartoon has PSAs, but he wanted it to be meaningful, to teach people a lesson.
And they did have somebody on staff that was helping them do that.
Right, exactly. So
I think that does it for the plot. And the way we're going to break these down, since it's the first episode, I'll give little disclaimers here. But we're going to move on to a segment we will call our Castle Grayskull moments.
Come on, Cringer. This is no place for us.
If only you were more of a prince.
I hope Adam's not gonna do what I think he's gonna do.
Let's go, Cringer. He-Man and Battle Cat are about to make an appearance.
I'm not really up for an appearance today, Adam.
Hurry.
What's the rush?
By the power of Grayskull!
Grayskull. I command the jaw bridge. Open!
All right, so we have entered Castle Grayskull, and the moments from Castle Grayskull would be things that were excellent from the episode, things we liked, highlights, our favorite parts, stuff that belongs in the halls of Castle Grayskull. First one for me, I have a few on this one. I like, even though I agree with the whole backstory thing, I do like how they introduce the characters for the whole series here.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that is, not only do you have Skeletor summoning each of the evil warriors, but as he does, it not only shows where they are, but he describes why he needs them to come back, or what it is about them that makes them an asset to him.
Right.
Whether it be Trapjaw's weapons, and his intelligence or his ability to bring different weapons to the table, whether it be Merman's controlling this the seas and sea creatures, etc.
Right.
Evelyn's magic. So I like how they did that.
Yeah.
Because then you automatically learn something about the character, which is character development. You learn why they're important to Skeletor, and you do learn that Skeletor is the boss, and these people are coming from different areas outside of Snake Mountain. I guess I didn't remember that. Looking back on this, since I haven't seen these episodes in a long time, I didn't remember that Beastman was there from the beginning at Snake Mountain. He wasn't summoned, so that was kind of an interesting tidbit for me. I love, now this is just something totally superficial and cosmetic, I guess. I love the way Skeletor walks. I don't know what it is about it, but the way they did the animation, I love the way Skeletor moves. The way he raises his arms and cheers for himself, the way he walks, it just to me fits a villain, and I like the way they did that. I thought it was clever that when they go to the palace at the beginning, right after we've seen Skeletor reveal the Diamond Ray of Disappearance, that after Orko's failed joke or magic, that Man-at-Arms says that he would like Orko to disappear. I thought that was clever. I thought that was like a little foreshadowing that he wants Orko to disappear, and they're all about to, except for Orko.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. I like how Trapjaw shows off his different weapons in this episode, but also shows off his inability to use all of and attach them all. But then at the same time, eats a sword.
Yeah.
They put a sword right by his face, and he freaking chomps that thing in half. I thought that was...
Trapjaw is essentially not Odd Job, Jaws.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's not. Odd Job is the one with the hat.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
No, but
the James Bond villain.
Yeah. To me, though, it was a thing where not only did we have Skeletor show where they came from and explain why they were an asset, but then we got to see in Trapjaw's case his assets in action, so to speak, why he was there. I like that we learned that Teela is a good shot in this episode. Got a little character development on her shooting ability, I guess.
Yeah.
I like my next note because it just says He-Man is strong. Immediately shown that he's not just strong, he's out of this universe strong. Right from the beginning. Not only do I like the way Skeletor walks, but another thing that cracks me up about Skeletor and makes me like him as a character, he's got the creepiest, almost female-like fingers that you'll ever see on a villain.
He does.
I mean, I know he's a skeleton somewhat, so they can't be meaty or anything but he has got some creepy ass, almost like their fingernail painted black, creepy goth fingernails from a girl. And I like that about it. But probably my favorite moment of this first episode was when Orko spun Triclops' eyes around. He freaking takes Triclops' visor, or whatever you want to call it, and spins it like the Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. What about you?
Awesome. We all know or most of us that grew up in the 80s should know by now in this day and age with, voice acting being everywhere and going behind the voice actors and all that stuff and learning about these people. It amazes me that the 3-role rule was essentially stretched to its entirety here, because you've got Alan Oppenheimer playing Skeletor, playing Man-at-Arms, playing, I think he's also Beastman. Again, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at his credits.
No, he's
not
not Beastman. He's Merman.
Merman. Okay, Merman. But you've got all of these actors that are playing at least 3 roles. Maybe some are maybe even playing more.
Yeah.
And I love the voice acting in the series. I just absolutely love it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, for
I love
for the ones that for the characters we've been revealed so far. I mean, obviously Linda Gary is every female we've been shown so far.
Right.
John Irwin is He-Man / Prince Adam. He's Ram Man and Beastman.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oppenheimer is Man-at-Arms, Skeletor, and Merman that we've seen so far, and then Scheimer is Orko, Stratos, King Randor, Trapjaw, and Triclops.
Yeah.
So those are the ones we've been exposed to at this point.
I love the banter between the evil warriors in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah,
that was just the bickering. That was just, and Skeletor comes in like, knock it off. It's time to get down to business. And yes, we are. I will freely admit I have a shitty Skeletor impression, and I will be using it throughout this show. I'm not ashamed to admit this, and I have no idea why it happened, but when He-Man opened the jawbridge, I teared up. Maybe it's because I miss my childhood. I don't know. But when he said the line of, I command the jawbridge open, it just made me tear up. Because I remember seeing that as a kid. And it was just so awesome. Boing goes the Ram Man.
Well, the thing is, the weird thing, and I didn't write this down before, but the weird thing is, like, with the evil warriors, we are introduced to each one of them individually.
Yeah.
And what their, strengths are, etc. With the good guys, we're not given that luxury. So then all of a sudden you see Ram Man bouncing in, and you're like, what in the flying heck is that?
Well, I mean, common sense. I mean, his name is Ram Man.
Well, I know,
so
but like the first time you see him, you're like, who is that, and what is he doing? So it's like that with a lot of the good characters. I mean, I know you're introduced to a couple of them in the themes, the intro. You're introduced to Man-at-Arms and Orko. And the Sorceress, but it's like when Ram Man and Stratos come in, you're kind of clueless at first.
Yeah. And my last one was Stratos bagged Evelyn in her own cape.
That was kind of funny.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that like immediately endears you to Stratos. Like, this guy's a badass.
Yeah, he is. And I know when a lot, and I know we're talking about good moments about the series, and I know that a lot of people say, oh well, it was all stock animation, it was this, it was that, the transformation scene was stock and blah blah blah. Well, that was for them to save money and time and being able to produce a weekly cartoon or a daily. I think at one point this was running 5 days a week. At one point, I could be wrong.
Yep.
Oh,
I don't mind the stock animation for most.
No, I don't mind it at all. I love it. I mean, it's like
some of it's better than others, but
yeah. I mean, sure, there are moments where the transition of when Adam pulls the sword and he says it, and it's him standing in Grayskull, and then it's He-Man. I have noticed in this episode. I don't know if I'll notice in future ones, but I did notice in this episode that it's not a straight fade. It's a really hard like you see Adam 1 second, and then the next half a second later is He-Man. It's not like a fade in, fade out thing. It just hard switches.
Some of the stock animation is what made this series memorable and what made this series a hit, because kids rely on routine and they attach to routine. So when you see that same transformation sequence over and over, it's something that kids look forward to. And even though they see it all the time, they're looking forward to every part of the episode. When you sit down for an episode after school on Tuesday or whatever, you're waiting for that one point where you get to see Prince Adam turn into He-Man.
Yeah.
Now, some of the stock animation is like when you see He-Man running, that's a whole different story. That's bad stock animation. But as far as his transition and that being used over, and when he punches the television screen, when he punches someone directly at where the viewer is viewing from, I don't mind that stock animation. But there is times where it rubs you the other way too. And that's kind of a good transition as we travel away from Castle Grayskull and go to Snake Mountain.
I'll call our warriors from around the universe and bring them here to Snake Mountain.
So now that we've entered Snake Mountain, it is definitely time to deal with the other side of things from this episode, the not-so highlights. I don't have very many for this episode. One of them we kind of already touched on. The animation on He-Man specifically, and I'm not talking about the stock animations so much. Some of it might be, but the animation on He-Man is not good, in my opinion. I mentioned how I liked how Skeletor's animation is done and how he walks and how he moves. I don't like how they do it with He-Man because it just looks like he's moving in an awkward manner.
They do it with all of the Warriors, or not the Warriors. They do it with all of the... Well, I guess Warriors, yeah. They do it with all of the Masters and all of the Evil Warriors. I noticed it specifically with Teela and He-Man. There's a couple of moments when, like, if Teela gets knocked down, she gets up, and it's the animation on her getting up is so it's so weird how she stands up and then she's running. Honestly, the running parts with any of the characters, whether it's He-Man, Teela, whoever, it looks like they're on fucking exercise machines. It looks like they're on It looks like they're on fucking treadmills, damn it. It just does.
Oh, I agree with you. But for some reason, Skeletor doesn't bother me the way they do hymns. Like, I know there's some times that are going to come up in this series because I remember him where he looks absolutely comical. Like, it's like one of those shows like Robot Chicken or like one of those shows that makes fun of other shows. Like, right. They almost have to do nothing with some of the stock animation you get or some of the scenes you get with Skeletor because it's so terrible and cheesy. But I just don't, so far in these couple episodes, I think it fits the way his character is and the way he moves fits with me. But like you said, with some of the other people, especially I noticed it with He-Man, it just looks off. It just looks like it doesn't fit his character, like you said, like he's on an exercise machine or something weird. Yeah. So that was kind of one of my moments from Snake Mountain. Another one came at the very end of the episode when I didn't quite get it. Why Prince Adam busts through the palace wall with I know the thing he was driving didn't have its directional thing on, blah, 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 blah. But it's not just the fact that he destroys the wall, but that he destroys the wall and the king and queen are like, oh, we're going to have to rebuild that. And then a second later, they're all laughing. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Your child just destroyed a humongous part of the palace wall.
Yeah.
That is not okay. That is not something that should be laughed about 2 seconds later.
Didn't Orko make a joke at the end?
Yeah, he makes a joke, and then it's like, oh, we forgot that he destroyed the wall.
That's why they laughed. It's because Orko opened his big fucking mouth.
Yeah, but it's like, that shouldn't make you just, ignore the fact that part of your palace is gone.
And that laughter was, I'm sorry, that as much as I commend the voice acting in the series, that laughter was so...
Well, they probably got tired of doing it every episode.
It was so weird. As far as Adam crashing stuff and as far as Adam screwing stuff up, I will mention this throughout the podcast, is that the way I see Adam and He-Man is Adam has to keep the cover of the dimwit, the moron, the failure.
That's true.
So that way, not only his parents, but the people of Eternia see He-Man as it's essentially a Clark Kent Superman aspect where,
he's got to dumb it down.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of does. But yeah, the whole laughing bit, that was, oh god.
My only other Snake Mountain moment for this episode was also towards the end. Mm-hmm. He-Man is trying to recover the diamond because he needs to crush it to bring back his family and friends.
Right.
He has to push the ground away from each other, which is fine. He's He-Man, he's strong, he can do that. He pushes the earth away from each other so that there's a big enough crevice for him to, duck down into.
Right.
Okay, he ducks down into that, gets the diamond, comes back up, struggles with it, smashing it, crushing it, eventually demolishing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For that entire sequence, when he's moving the earth apart, when he's ducking down to get it, when he comes back up, and as he struggles to crush it, every single character in the area is just watching him.
Yep.
We're talking about not just the good characters, but all the evil characters. It's like it was a show on TV or something, and they're all just glued, watching to see what's going to happen. Yeah. Somebody shoot him. Somebody throw something at him. Somebody go try to push him down the crevice that he has already put himself into. Like, I don't understand that sequence. It doesn't make sense. No bad guy. Like, no, please don't do that.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say negative about that scene, and it's just because you actually made me think of. I didn't initially write it down, but I when I was watching the episode, I thought of this. The entire time He-Man is straining to do all of this, spread the crevice apart and jump in the hole and pull the stuff out. It's like, and the whole time he's grunting and groaning and moaning, and I'm like, it's a horrible 80s porno. It's really what it is, because all of the noises that John Irwin is making is like, it sounds like he's either trying to orgasm and can't, or I don't know. It was weird.
It wasn't just that. Like, I could see if you're a bad guy and you see the good guys, he has to go hit a button or something, and he's running towards it, and there's literally nothing you can do, so you're just watching him do it because you're too far away or you don't have any way to stop him. This man is in a crevice, struggling, fighting his orgasms back as he is smashing this diamond. There is obvious, it should be like light bulbs clicking on every bad guy's brain saying, this is a good time to attack. Yes. And they don't. What about you? Any other Snake Mountain moments for you?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, we're going to move into yet another section. This will be a little bit different than what we've used in our previous podcasts, like Mass Mayhem. So just have to hang tight and wait and see what we have for you.
Boy, the things people leave lying around.
All right, so now that we've traveled to Castle Grayskull and took you to Snake Mountain, it's time for us to enter our awards section, where we occasionally will hand out awards or rank our shows, etc. This is the point in every podcast episode that we will not only give our ranking on the episode, but if we feel there are awards to hand out, we will do so. And that happens in one of two ways. If something from or someone from the episode, just like we're amazed by them, we really like them, they stood out, not just our favorite character from the episode, that's too easy, but someone that just really stood out as someone we really liked in the episode, then we will hand out a power sword to them. On the flip side of that, if someone stunk up the place like Stinkor, we will hand out a Havoc staff. See, I do know my He-Man stuff. We will hand out a Havoc staff to them as being a crappy character for the episode. And I will start this off by... And sometimes we won't do this. If there's nobody that stood out and nobody that stunk up the place, we won't have any to give out. So it'll be kind of... And neither one of us knows what the other one is doing in these sections. We don't know if we rank the episode. We don't know if we have any awards to give out. So it's always going to be a surprise. So we will usually ask if you have one to give out or not. I do have a power sword to give out for this one, which is obviously the good thing here. And I'm giving that in this episode to Skeletor.
Wait a second. Why are you... Oh, okay, I get it.
Now
I get it. Never mind.
Right, I'm giving a power sword to Skeletor. I really liked him in this episode. I, number one, like that he is shown right from the beginning to be in charge. He is the one summoning the villains. He is the one explaining to us why he needs them. I like the way he's moving. I'm liking the animation that they're using. I like that immediately we are shown a couple things about him. Number one, he's smart. He uses the whole trap jaw as a diversion thing so that he can get what he wants. I like how he uses his people and, delegates things to him. And, he knew when it was time to get away. I like that we see a little bit of his magical powers. I like the way, some of his lines, etc. I just thought Skeletor stood out as right from the beginning, a bad guy. And that's important for a series, is to have a solid main villain. And for me, this episode sets him up as a good villain. It's someone that you realize has some intelligence, has some magic, has some power. Yeah, he's your typical villain, so he's got a bunch of bad sides and weaknesses. But he's someone that, for me, if I was watching this as a kid, I would say that's a legit villain right from the get-go. He's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm giving him a power sword for this episode. Are you giving any awards out for this episode?
Again, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, as I will continue to remind people, I'm coming from this at two different angles, where fresh on the episodes as far as watching them for the first time in a long time, but I do remember bits from when I watched it as a kid. And I gotta give Power Sword back to He-Man simply because of remembering the Jawbridge scene. That scene to me makes He-Man's character. It shows you that he is in command of his Power Sword. He is somewhat in command of Grayskull, but he is also the keeper and protector of Grayskull.
Yeah, he's like the last line of defense, and it sets him up very well as, you can't count him out. He will be there. He will defend things, and he will come through when it's clutch. Exactly,
and that's exactly why I like it. Not only for the line of, I command the Jawbridge open, it just, the whole character deal with him, I absolutely love that part.
And we will keep track as we go travel throughout
you will keep
Tales of
track.
Eternia. I will keep track of who we've awarded the most things to, and et cetera, and we'll give you some wrap-up at the end. So that's the awards. As far as the ratings go, myself, I will be ranking every episode based on 0 through 5 scale of, for me, Battle Cats. For some reason, I find that to be my little badge of honor here. And for this episode, I'm giving this one 4 Battle Cats out of 5. 4, I can't give it a 5 because it's the first episode of the series, and like you said, it does not, for me, satisfy my desire for an origin story or a backstory. That's the only thing that keeps me going from giving it a 5. There's nothing bad about this episode that makes me want to take any points away from it or rank it low at all. I enjoy the episode. I enjoy how we're introduced to all the characters. The action's good. At this point, you haven't seen it a million times, so it's not old. So there's nothing bad about this episode. I just think it could have been a notch better.
Yeah. For me, I am going to, and I thought of this simply because until we get to an episode focusing on this character is essentially the joke of the entire cartoon series. So I will be ranking on 0 to 5 Orcos for Tales of Eternia. And I also have to give this 4 out of 5 Orcos. It was good. I loved a lot of things about it, as you just said about the continuity bits and not really having a flushed out setup story. It kind of does feel a bit of, even though you have the introduction of the Evil Warriors, even though you have a slight introduction of Stratos and Ram Man, it does feel like a one-off episode a little bit. So yeah, I give it 4 out of 5 Orcos.
All right, so high rankings for our very first episode of the series and of the franchise. So that's a good start. And with that, we can move on to learn about Teela, I think.
Approach the altar.
My name is Teela. I've come...
I know why you are here. You have come seeking your past. A past that only I can make clear. Behold, Teela. Do you know him?
Yes, it's Man-at-Arms as a young warrior.
Years ago, your adopted father was making his way through the evergreen forest. He had received a strange psychic signal, drawing him urgently through the woods. Then suddenly, a sound reached his ears. It was the cry of a falcon. Merman and his subjects had come to capture Zoar the falcon. They intended to sacrifice the mystic bird to an evil sea demon. It would have been easy for the falcon to have flown away, but there was something in the nest she was protecting. Something she'd give her very life to defend. Merman had been defeated, but he swore to someday get even with the young warrior. The warrior looked into the nest and saw...
Wait, why did you stop?
I sense evil coming closer. Beware, Teela. Beware.
Oh, Oracle, finish your tale. Tell me of my mother.
Young Man-at-Arms had driven off Merman and made his way to the falcon's nest. Inside the nest was a baby girl. It was the sorceress's young daughter. With the passing of her husband, she had brought the child to the mountain to raise her in peace. But after Merman's attack, the falcon knew that without a real home, the baby would never be truly safe. The young warrior's heart went out to the child, and he promised to care for her all his days. You are that child, Teela.
That means my mother is the sorceress of Grayskull. Mother? Yes. You are my own daughter, and someday you will take my place as the mystic guardian of Grayskull. But for now, you have other deeds to do. And until that time when your special destiny calls, you must forget what you have learned today. She will only remember that her mother was a woman who loved her very much. I leave her secret with you, He-Man. You can, I assume, keep a secret?
I've had lots of practice.
All right, for our second episode, it's time to go on a quest, Teela style. Teela's Quest, Episode 2 for our purposes, and I will again mention, if there are some of the superfans out there, if we are using a bad source for our dates, please comment or leave us a message and give us good dates to use. My thing that I was using says that this episode originally aired September 6th, 1983, so that's what I'm going off of. And Teela's Quest was written by some guy named Paul Dini.
Where do we know him from?
I will mention that I am avoiding... I literally could look at my DVD sets. I could look online and get the list of writers and write them all down, way in advance. But I am purposefully...
As you watch the episodes.
I'm purposefully not looking at who writes any of the episodes until I watch the episode and see it on the screen. I like the surprise of turning the episode on and seeing the writer come up on the screen, and then only having a few seconds to be like either excited or dreading the episode that's about to come up. And,
right.
And when I see Paul Dini's name, I was instantly happy.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
For those of you, before Kevin gets into the plot, for those of you who might be living under a rock or, in
not
some
everybody's a cartoon super fans like us.
Well, right, but for those of you who are, living under a rock or in some far-off Despondos dimension, Paul Dini, writer on Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Batman Beyond, obviously He-Man, very, very, very awesome dude, very accomplished and amazing storyteller. So
that should set you up for this episode. All right.
There you go.
So Teela's Quest. We start in space. And at the moment, we are seeing some type of character who says her name is Marlena. She seems to be stranded in a spaceship in an asteroid shower, who decides to land on Eternia out of desperation to get away from the asteroid shower. Mm-hmm. We're then transitioned into seeing that, that is a flashback. That was the Queen and how she arrived on the planet, because we're shown Queen Marlena and Prince Adam watching that through a nifty little device that Man-at-Arms has crafted. It's also, I believe, our first exposure to the fact that Man-at-Arms is an inventor / Doc Brown genius creator of different things.
Yeah. I think it might have been said in Diamond of Disappearance somewhere.
But we didn't get to see it in action, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
So we see that is how the Queen arrived. Adam asks her about Earth. And she doesn't give a whole lot of information. We're not given her whole backstory. But we are kind of given a little bit of what we might have been lacking in the first episode, as a little bit of information of where these people came from, and that she was from Earth, and that she eventually comes to Eternia. we don't know how she meets King Randor, et cetera, but at least we get where she comes from. Teela gets angry for Adam skipping out on some of their exercises. She kind of bursts in and kind of in a little funny sequence puts the thing on Adam, and we see that he had, quote, gone fishing.
And again, this goes back to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
In Diamond Ray Of Disappearance, is that Adam has to keep up the role of the slacker.
Yeah, it's a good point that I hadn't thought about before. We get some more evidence of Orko showing off his magic, creating a musical bomb box that almost exploded in Man-at-Arm's face. And then Teela starts asking about her mother, and Man-at-Arms reveals that there is, he doesn't really come out and say it, but he basically says that, yeah, I know stuff about your mom, but I can't tell you. It's a secret. So we're immediately left with the feeling that obviously there's something interesting or important about Teela's mom. And that's basically what the gist of this episode is going to be. It's her quest of learning about herself. Now, we learn a little bit about Teela's history and that she was basically raised by Man-at-Arms, and that she was obviously not with her parents. There's also a new thing introduced to the series here that we haven't heard about before called the Oracle of the Crystal Sea. And Teela comes up with the idea that she needs to travel to the Oracle of the Crystal Sea, some type of source of knowledge or something that's going to give her more information on her beginnings. Orko, I don't know, this might be the first time we see this too. Not only is he inconsistent with his magic, but we see very quickly that he can't keep secrets.
There are many. Well,
it's a very important secret.
Well, right, but I do have to bring this up because now that you say that, I do remember throughout this entire cartoon there are times when Man-at-Arms, and I'm not going to cite any specific ones because I don't remember those. I do remember this part of the plotline, though. There are times where Man-at-Arms has to shut him up or elbow him, because there are times in this series where Orko almost gives Adam's secret away. So
he's very easily persuaded to talk.
Yes.
So he basically reveals where Teela's going. So Adam is going to follow, or / He-Man is going to follow Teela on her journey. We then transition for basically the first time in the episode to Snake Mountain. And we see that Skeletor has the ability to basically spy or see whatever's going on anywhere. He's got cameras in the sky. We're talking Big Brother style. We see a tie between Merman and Man-at-Arms because there's a reference to what we'll later learn about, that there's some history between the two. Mm-hmm. And we also learn that this Oracle of the Crystal Sea is located in Merman's, basically his home turf or his home territory. So Skeletor sends Merman to take on the task of seeing what's going on there. We also see the emergence of things called Shadow Beasts, and there's a little commercial cliffhanger there where Teela is cornered by a group of Shadow Beasts, and it switches to commercial, so oh no, what's going to happen to her? She uses bright light against them, and we'll get to that later, and gets to the Oracle of the Crystal Sea. The Oracle is starting to show Teela her past, but unbeknownst to her that it's actually about her. He shows Sorceress having basically a nest that is being attacked by Merman and his minions. There's going to be some type of sacrifice. Man-at-Arms comes in and protects the nest. But then the Oracle stops because Merman and his minions appear and take Teela captured. Mm-hmm. So she is captive. And Orko fills the Sorceress in on what happened. This is real time now, not a flashback. Orko fills the Sorceress in on what happened, and she also leaves to try to see what's happened. So not only has He-Man gone to protect her, now the Sorceress obviously sees something very important and goes to see what's happening. He-Man catches up, speaks to the Oracle, learns a little bit more, and then we have the whole scene where Merman is putting the Crimson Pearl to use to summon Bakul, who they sacrifice things to. They were originally going to sacrifice the baby in the nest to it. Now they're going to sacrifice Teela to it all these years later, which we will later on learn is the same person. He-Man appears and takes over. Sorceress comes in and takes Merman's staff. Without the staff, he can't control Bakul. Bakul attacks Merman, and then in a weird twist, He-Man saves Merman, and then He-Man gets attacked. We do learn that Sorceress, her husband had been killed at some point, and that she realized that she could not care for her daughter efficiently So that is why she gives Teela, who we are revealed is Sorcerer's daughter, to Man-at-Arms to raise. Then right before I was going to have a problem with something, I had to erase my notes because Teela's memory is wiped. So even though she has learned that she's the daughter of the sorceress, not only that she's the daughter of the sorceress, but that she is going to be next in line to take over that position of the magical keeper of Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
But then they might wipe her memory, which we'll talk more about in a bit. And that's kind of the end of the episode. So bad guys, we didn't have a lot of them besides the Shadow Beasts and these weird creatures. We basically just had Skeletor and Merman. Yeah. And for the good characters, we had all of them from the first episode, except obviously we didn't see Stratos or Ram Man.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the plot for this Teela's quest?
I really enjoyed it. It's very, very well written and thought out. I really don't have too many overall issues with it. I mean,
I almost was going to have an issue. My only issue that I almost was going to write down, because obviously this just proves that I haven't seen these recently, so I forgot that this is the twist they put at the end.
Yeah.
At first I was like, this is an epic story line. This is an awesome connection of showing not only where Queen Marlena came from in the beginning, but now we're learning background information about Teela and the sorceress, and that there's a connection between the two. I'm like, this sets everything up awesome. I was like, but for a second I was like, but wait, this could be something that's cool because we know about it, and it would be cool if it takes a long time for Teela to figure out, because then we kind of are in on the secret, but she's not, but we're wondering what they're going to eventually do with it. And then I'm like, they tell Teela, and I'm like, wait a second, we didn't draw this out even past one episode? It's too soon for her to know. And then they wiped her memory, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Never mind, I have no problem.
Yes.
So I think it's cool, and not only did we get all those background information, but he does throw a twist at the end, so it's not just, it's not just what it seems as on the surface.
And I think with the twist with the plot is, it's not only is her memory wiped, the only part of her memory that they wiped was the part about her destiny.
Right.
Sorceress does leave in the parts about doesn't leave in that the sorceress is her mother, but the sorceress flat out says she will know that her mother loved her very much, etc., etc., etc. So that way you won't have Teela whining every episode, I want to know who my mother is, blah, 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 blah. So I do really, really like that. Again, as I said, very well thought out way of writing the episode and making the plot make sense.
They packed a whole lot into a 20-some minute period.
Yeah.
Episode, a whole lot of storytelling, and it never felt like it was storytelling. Like sometimes when you have to fit a bunch of storytelling in, it becomes slow because you're listening to a bunch of dialogue or doing this. This episode went by really fast because there was a lot happening. And not to mention, I mentioned, that they give the background on Marlena and the sorceress and Teela, but you also get a spotlight on Merman.
Yep.
So, they did a lot with this episode that I thought was really excellently done, and it did not surprise me when, Paul Dini was in charge of this, that this became a solid episode. And this is not something where I said, oh, it's Paul Dini, I'm going to like it no matter what. This is something where it's like, oh, this is why this guy is good for stuff like this.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely, yes.
The lesson at the end, this time we get our lesson from Eternia from Teela, so we get to see that it's not just going to come from He-Man every time. And this was, again, fit perfect in with the episode, and also fits perfect with what kids could be dealing with that are watching these cartoons. It's talking about, it doesn't have to be biological. It's not about, necessarily always who your blood parents are, but who actually took the time, raised you, cared for you, sacrificed, for you. And it was kind of almost like a pro-adoption or stepmom, stepdad type thing where, it's not about the DNA all the time. Sometimes it's about who put the work in.
And it's more so about who put the work in than it is about the DNA. But as a personal note for myself, my parents got divorced when I was 2. I did see my dad like once a week. But there were times where I wouldn't see him for 3 or 4 months, and then there were, by the time I was between 7 and 9, he got remarried and moved where I currently live, and I was still in Massachusetts, and I didn't see him at all. So essentially, my aunt and uncle and my 3 cousins, they were my second type of family outside of my mom, because I was an only child, just like Adam is an only, well, supposedly Adam is an only child. You know what I mean? So I can very much relate to this of, I always wanted to be over at an uncle's house. I just always did, because I liked hanging out with my cousins. I liked, just being there. I just really enjoyed it. And it's just a great, great message that they have here.
And it's something that I never realized ever before about this series, was that they have built into the foundation of this series a relationship of a girl being raised by someone who is not her dad. Right. And that connection and how that could speak to someone who is, being raised by someone who is not necessarily their dad, or raised by people that, to them is not their biological parents. So I think that's very cool that they kind of worked that in there, and I never really thought about that until now.
And if you really want to nitpick it, you would think that her mom would have to be a redhead, seeing as how Man-at-Arms is not.
Well, genes are funny sometimes. Let's get our... Do you have any other plot notes?
No.
All right, let's go to Castle Grayskull.
After all, if Teela wants to go running off to the Crystal Sea, that's her business.
The Crystal Sea?
Oops.
Even Teela's no match for the evil creatures there. Orko, you should have stopped her.
I tried.
Cringer, we've got to find her.
Oh, don't tell me I have to be that dreadful battle cat again.
Sorry, old cat, but he could stay on Teela's trail better than you could.
All right, let's see what we find for Teela's quest in the halls of Castle Grayskull. I thought it was hilarious at the beginning when Teela comes in and is yelling at Adam, puts the visor on, shows that he's fishing, and like he's caught, and she's busting him out, and she's like, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And he goes, "Yeah, I didn't catch a thing." It's like, not only is is like just it almost showed like his smart ass side, but it was also very humorous, and I just thought it was a good timing and a good joke, and it wasn't one of those cheesy jokes that they threw in that everybody has to laugh at. It was a joke that they threw in that you could laugh at on your own.
Right.
So I like that. I've mentioned it before. I absolutely love the backstory we get in this episode. All the backstory I was missing from the first episode, I got a good dose of it in this episode, so that makes it better for me. I love seeing Merman's home turf and kind of his little headquarter area there. Not headquarters is the wrong word, but I couldn't think of a better word to use. But just kind of like his terrain and
yeah, his area of the planet.
I thought that was cool. I feel like you now, because I'm going to make a reference that nobody's going to get. But but He-Man was talking. It's just the timing and the cadence that they use when he says this. But the thing, Merman, I think, is on... Merman or the monster is up like on top of like a mountain-type peak. Right, not really a mountain. Right. And Battle Cat can't climb up it. And He-Man goes, "Your claws weren't made for climbing." And it sounds like the country song or whatever, where it's like, "These boots were made for walking," or something like that.
Shania Twain, yeah.
And I just like, oh my God, the way they said it almost fit perfectly within the song. I was like, Did they just say that? And then, like I said before, I love the Sorceress Teela connection. That's not something you would expect going into it, because there's no clues that that's going to exist. And I love that we were let in on it, and Teela's not. Because then it kind of ties you into being like feeling you're part of that inner circle that knows the secrets, whereas not all the characters know the secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are my favorite moments.
For me, I actually have to correct you on something in the plot, is that we did see... my first note was I love seeing Marlena's journey and her backstory. We didn't see her, and I think it's because of the times that the king and the queen are meant to reflect, like Arthurian times. We didn't see them like how they fell in love or dated or whatever else, but we did see the fact that he did rescue her and he made her his queen. So it wasn't like they just skipped over that part. I love how Teela wants to learn her heritage after seeing, seeing Marlena's experience with, bringing her memories back and stuff like that. I really do love that. something I know that you might not have picked up on, but I always, for people that have listened to our shows before, they know I pick up on the strangest things, but I thought this was really cool. Cringer. Go Cringer. He dreads Battle Cat. I love this because it shows that Cringer has a side of himself that he isn't quite okay with. It shows really interesting character depth, and it shows that it's two personalities in one body. Like Battle Cat is him being fearless and, you know, standing up, whereas as himself, he just again I have to use the whole Superman Clark Kent thing where it's almost as if it's two different personalities in the same body, and it's just I just absolutely love the whole line of, oh no, you know, oh no, do we have to let him come out? He scares me, or you know, whatever it was that he said, and I just absolutely love that about Cringer.
Yeah, Cringer's likable.
And I loved how John Irwin can change his voice so much to fit the different characters that he voices, whereas you know, his He-Man voice is very booming and loud. His Adam voice is kind of soft and meek, and his Oracle voice is almost like a sage. It almost reminds me of Obi-Wan, honestly.
Yeah, there's just enough. Like that's the other thing I like about watching this as an adult is, and maybe it's just having all the experience of listening to a million voice actors. For the BehindTheVoiceActors.com.
Yes.
But I like that I'm able to pick out who's doing what character. Especially it's easy because there's only 3 guys to choose from. So you're like, is that Lou Scheimer, Alan Oppenheimer, or John Irwin? And I'm being able to add a bunch of characters to the page now because I'm like, oh, that's him. That's him. So that's cool.
My final Grayskull moment is, so this series is swords, sorcery, and psychics. Because I swear, as soon as I saw the, you know, heard the name Oracle, and as soon as I saw it was a crystal orb, it looks like a crystal ball. I'm like, really, psychics, really? But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for Grayskull moments.
All right, let's venture to Snake Mountain then.
Let us summon Baku!
Hold it, fish face.
He-Man!
All right. Now that we've arrived at Snake Mountain, let's see what we find here. I have 2 minorly, majorly problems here. They're somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Should we just assume that Teela knows all the weaknesses of the various life forms of Eternia?
Why do you say that?
She's confronted with a Shadow Beast, and immediately she's like, oh, this ball of light. They can't see the light. They're weak if they see the light. I will shine bright lights in their face. Like, how did she know that?
Okay, and again, if any of the listeners or any of the Super He fans want to write in, email in feedback.
He fans, I like that.
No, seriously, they are called He fans and She ravers. That's what the fan community of the fans is called. He fans and She ravers. At least that's what Toy Guru calls them. If any of the He fans want to write in feedback at Geekcast Radio, let us know if the Shadow Beasts made any appearances in the mini comics before the cartoon series, if there was continuity before this at all. Because, yeah, you are right. Why does she know this? And it's common knowledge for us after this that, oh, they're afraid of light.
I mean, well, the reason I bring that up, I'm not trying to nitpick. The reason I'm bringing this up is I want to know, is this a character development thing where we are learning that she is a very knowledgeable person that has studied the various life forms of Eternia, and she just knows, like, we should expect to be able to turn to her when we need to know weaknesses about things? Or is this just a slight oversight where we just needed her to know the weaknesses? Like, she's like, oh, they're the Shadow Beast. Light. Like, she put 2 and 2 together? I don't know. It just seemed too easy that she immediately knew what to do.
I think that with the way that this series is and the way that it doesn't have a directed continuity, I would assume that I don't know. I know in the later series, in the 2002 series, both her and Adam are supposed to be teenagers. In this series, I honestly don't know. I would assume Teela's anywhere between 18 and 25.
I always pictured her as in the young 20s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I always
that's
pictured
fine.
Adam and Teela about like between 21 and 25.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that.
I know we're gonna get blasted on that, and everybody's gonna say that no, they're like 17 or 16 or whatever. But they do not act like 17 and 16-year-olds.
Yeah, it'll create good fan reaction. Yes, but my point here is that Teela seems to, throughout these first 2 episodes of the series, it seems like they've been fighting for a long time.
Yeah, well,
like Man-at-Arms raised her to be a fighter, taught her everything he knew about battle. So it could be the fact that she was raised that way, and maybe you're right. Maybe she does study the stuff.
Or maybe she's encountered them before.
Maybe, yeah. That's the other thing.
It just seemed odd at first when I first saw that.
Yeah.
The other thing also involves Teela. He-Man, at one point, I thought it was cool that he actually threw the sword, because I don't think we had seen that up to this point.
No.
We've seen him use the sword to reflect things. We've seen him use the sword in other ways. But he actually chucks the sword to free Teela.
Yeah.
Or to do whatever he does. I can't remember why he throws the sword. But he throws the sword, and it sticks into the side of the mountain. And then at one point, he's like, Teela, use the sword. And I don't necessarily buy that she could pull that thing out of it's like removing the sword from the stone type thing.
Yeah.
She pulled that sword out like she was He-Man. And maybe he just barely got it in, and it was just barely sticking into this rock wall. But he's He-Man, so if he threw a sword, that thing should be in there deep. And she just whipped that thing out. I know that one particularly is me being a nitpicky thing, but I had to find something bad to say about the episode, didn't I?
No, not necessarily.
What do you have, Snake Mountain?
Well, I will kind of piggyback off of that to where I think, and again, I know I keep referencing this and people are probably going to be like, no, it's not that, it's not that. One of the biggest things with Paul Dini and Bruce Timm and all of the DC Animated Universe creators starting Justice League was Superman is all powerful. How do we make him not, just outshine all of the rest of the Justice Leaguers? Same thing with He-Man. He-Man is supposed to be the powerful, most powerful man in the universe. So I think where it might be possibly a dumbing down of his power a little bit in this moment of her being able to pull the sword out. I don't know. The only thing I had written down, because the story flows so well, the action is really cool. The only thing that I had written down for a Snake Mountain moment was maybe I spoke a little bit too soon about Orko being smarter than Scott and T-Bob, because a music box of a bomb parts, really? Oh my god. And it wasn't a dud because it did explode. It just, that moment just, I can't wait until Larry DiTillio gets story stuff with Orko. Oh boy. But yeah, that was pretty much all I had. I mean, the story overall, the action, the overall episode is just amazing, so I only had one thing.
All right. Well, in that case, it's time for my favorite part of the show, the award ceremony.
Better let me handle this, Cat. Your claws weren't made for climbing crystal.
All right, it's time to hand out our power swords or havoc staffs if we have any. I'll let you go first. Do you have any awards to hand out, sir?
I am going to give a power sword because not only did Teela really use the power sword in this episode, I got to give her a POGS power sword because overall the backstory... Oh my god,
you just said give her a POGS power sword, and now I'm envisioning collecting cards of these things or somehow like giving her an actual POG. Oh god.
Yes, exactly. A POGS power sword. And I give it to her, but I also I honestly give it to Paul Dini and the backstory and the power of the writing. No, seriously.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that you just did that.
It's true because the story is so powerful. It keeps you, like you said you said a few minutes ago, where they fit a lot into a 21, 22, 23-minute episode, and it is a lot to take in, but it's not like when you're watching something and it's like, you get 15 minutes in and you're like, oh my god, when is this episode going to end? It's more so like you're sitting here, you're not paying attention to the clock, you're watching it, and you're just so engrossed in it. So yeah, between Teela and Paul Dini, they both get a POGS power sword.
All right, I am sticking with the theme and only giving out power swords so far. This was like a female empowerment episode. I mean, if you think of it, look at what Teela did in this episode. She's running shit at the castle and calling out Adam for being a douchebag, even though he's doing it on purpose. But she wants to know something about her past, so she goes out and says, "Screw it! If people aren't going to tell me, I'm going to go find it for myself." Not in like a completely reckless way, but she's going to do that. But like seriously, she knows how to deal with a shadow beast. She can pull a sword out of the rock and do all that stuff. Like, she took charge. Like, she was all about it. And so yeah, it's not just that we learned a bunch about her, it's that she came across as a very strong individual and a strong character in this episode.
And it goes back to my explanation to you about your wondering about her being able to pull the power sword, is that she has been fighting for years, it seems. Like, she has been fighting since she was a teenager. If we're going to pigeonhole her into being between 20 and 25, she's been doing this a while.
Yeah, she grew up doing it, and she's been in that culture. But at the same time, we come across someone who seems like they're responsible, reliable. And she's not my favorite character in this franchise whatsoever. But I can't give it to anybody but her on this. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one, and I think it's awesome that you gave one out to Paul Dini. That's thinking outside the box right there.
That's right.
As far as Battle Cats go, if it's not obvious the way we've been ranting and raving, for me, it's 5. 5 out of 5. Paul Dini did an excellent job with it. We got a whole lot of backstory. We got a whole lot of action. It was not slow. I love Merman, so I love that we got a little focus on him. And I couldn't really come up with that much bad about this episode. So to me, it was a perfect mixture of story and action, and that for me gives a 5.
Same here. 5 out of 5 Orcos. Pretty much everything you just said. Just the overall. We essentially get 3 backstories in this episode. We get Marlena's, we get Teela's, and because Teela's ties into the Sorceress, we get the Sorceress.
Well, and you get a little bit of Man-at-Arms and a little bit of Merman.
Yep.
And their history with each other. So
yeah. I mean, this is essentially a full-on backstory episode for a majority of the, I wouldn't say side characters, but secondary, and it really didn't focus, and I'm glad it didn't, because the first episode, Diamond Ray of Disappearance, focused on the evil warriors versus He-Man and blah, blah, blah. This one is solely story-driven and telling you what's going on with these other characters versus, hey, here's another He-Man story. Yeah.
Well, and for me, I don't necessarily need to learn about He-Man and Skeletor right away in their backstory, because I'm already buying them as a villain and as a hero. I buy them in that role. I can learn about their role as we go on, but it is more important for me, these side characters, I don't necessarily have any connection to them. They're not, I need to know why they're in the role that they're in. I need to understand their place in this universe. So I would rather get an early story that tells me about some of the side characters and then learn maybe about He-Man, Skeletor, etc. later on.
Exactly.
So yeah, an excellent episode for Teela's quest. And we will see how the next episode stacks up against it.
Follow me, beast, and don't drop the Energizer!
Someday you won't order me around, Skeletor.
A little more energy should be enough to bring Colossor to life. Soon Eternia will be all mine!
Can you help us, Sorceress? We must find the answer before nightfall, or it will be too late to save Man-at-Arms.
This menace is larger than you imagine. You will walk through fire before it is over. Seek the fire jewels, He-Man. Only they can save Man-at-Arms.
I will need help on this quest.
All right, so after dealing with Diamond Rays and going on a quest with Teela, it's time to awaken Colossor. Episode 3, which, according again to my dates, air date September 7th, 1983, so these were airing back-to-back-to-back days back in the year 1983. And this one, the writer was a J. Bryn, I'm guessing it's Bryn Stevens. So J. Bryn Stevens, who I'm completely unfamiliar with. So
Same here.
We will judge him as we go. So the plot for Colossor Awakes. We start this time with Skeletor, and he is revealing or unveiling his new vehicle / weapon that he is going to call, I think he called it the Collector.
Yeah.
All right. And then after he shows his minions that, we go to Man-at-Arms, who is playing Orko in a very interesting chess-like game. It almost reminds me of the Star Wars chess game that Chewbacca plays against Han or C-3PO when they have the pieces that come alive and stuff like that. And anyways, after they're playing their chess game, the palace is getting attacked. That seems to be a recurring thing. He-Man decides that it's time to, or Prince Adam decides it's time to do his Superman phone booth thing, turn into He-Man, but not in time to save Man-at-Arms from being turned to stone. And then to see Skeletor not only turn people to stone, but turn stone to life. He brings these stone statues of lion-like creatures to life that are going to attack the good characters there. But the Masters show up, He-Man and etc. to help out. Ram-Man, I think, shows up at that point. I can't remember. And they're there to help out. Battle ensues until Skeletor eventually retreats. And then we learn that Man-at-Arms has until sundown, until it's permanently rock form for him.
Yeah.
All right. Meanwhile, Skeletor is now trying to awake this thing called Colossor, which is basically a giant stone statue that he is using the Collector to get energy to then shoot this thing to try to wake him up. It's kind of a convoluted thing, but we'll go with it. The Sorceress tells He-Man that he needs the fire jewels to save Man-at-Arms. Evil Lyn then, via communicator, informs Skeletor that He-Man is on his way for the fire jewels.
Those are some hot balls.
He-Man encounters a swamp bat type character who Beastman seems to be controlling, so there's a little encounter there, but He-Man scares him with a flash ball. There's a lot of balls in this episode. And then he gets his hand on the fireballs. The fire jewels. He-Man then, don't think about this too literally. He-Man then crushes the jewels into fine powder and creates a tool to basically make the laser backfire so that it will have the reverse effect when it's the green laser type thing or whatever. Colossor, meanwhile, I know it seems like I'm jumping all around, folks, but this is literally the plot. Colossor is then attacking Grayskull. He-Man gets back just in time as Skeletor fires on the group and turns them all back to normal. And then they move their attention to Colossor and Grayskull. He-Man takes out Colossor and saves the day. That is the quickest and least painful way I can describe that plot. Hold on. Let me just mention a couple things. We have the Collector. We have Colossor. We have fire jewels. We have flashballs. We have turning the laser in the Collector to backfire. We have a million different things going on here. People being turned to stone, people being turned to life, people being turned back into life. Was all I could say as I was watching this episode.
I was waiting for 5 magical lions to fly in, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. I'm going to save most of my plot points for a later section.
Yeah. This episode, honestly, fucking sucks. It just does. I mean,
this episode, what this episode does is it proves for everybody that we are watching these objectively, because we have both had very good comments about episodes, and what you're about to see is very bad comments about episodes. So we don't just love them all, we don't just hate them all. We're watching them for what they are, and this episode is awful.
All right, let's, without real, I'm hoping with this, I'm not going to steal away from your notes, but let's look at this plan of Skeletor's. He is collecting this energy by turning people to... Oh my god, I just thought of this. Holy crap. Essentially, the Collector is the Magna Beam transport. Oh my god, it is. Because he's collecting energy from people and things to then feed and awake this Colossor thing to do what? To break into Grayskull. Like, that's gonna happen. I mean, come on. Fucking He-Man.
Well, it's just one of those things where you're introduced at the beginning to this machine, this collector thing, which seems to have some cool lasers. It's a cool thing. You're turning things into rock, or you're turning rock into life, whatever. I don't understand why you need then another thing.
Yeah.
In this case, in the form of Colossor. Like, you don't need two devices or
You don't.
thing.
Colossor is essentially a red herring that is an unneeded piece of the
You
plot.
could easily just had the whole plot about the collector, about that he's turning things into rock or not turning things into rock, and He-Man's quest to try to save his friends, or even if you didn't have, you could have left that whole part out too and just had it be He-Man's quest to stop this machine and destroy it.
Outside of Ram Man and Stratos, we have not met any of the other heroes or masters, as they're called, in this series to this point in this episode.
Well,
hold on. If Skeletor really wanted to be smart, he would have lured the sorceress out of Grayskull to that battle. He would have turned all of them to stone. Every palace guard, every chef, every king, every queen, every He-Man, every Teela, every man-at-arms, every Orko.
Well, and it would have...
He would have essentially turned everyone in Eternia to stone, or everyone at least at the palace to stone, and then he could have gone to Grayskull and just went in himself.
Or it could have set up for a great episode where you have all of the main players turned into stone, and you have one lone character that somehow got missed that then has to save them all. There was multiple options for how you could have used this. I have no problem with the collector. I have no problem with the fact that it was doing what it was doing with the stone and life, etc.
I have no problem with that.
But they just went terribly off the course after they introduced that.
Yeah,
and it's just there's no fluidity, there's no train of thought where you could follow this easily, especially as a kid. It's all over the place. You mentioned that we haven't yet met any more of the Masters. Also, last episode we just basically had Merman and Skeletor, and this episode we just have Skeletor, Beastman, and Evelyn. So we've only seen Triclops and Trapjaw once. So we're not getting a whole lot of the evil characters yet either, which I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as an observation.
Yeah.
And then the lesson from Eternia this time was a duo. We got it from both He-Man and Teela. And again, I'll bring this up later, but the lesson basically was about exercise and not going too hard, too quickly, taking it slowly, but the importance of exercise is what I got out of that.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
This was the first, and I don't know because I have not watched any other episodes besides these three. This was the first one out of the three today that made absolutely no sense to the story.
It did not connect it to the episode whatsoever.
No, not at all.
This feels like an episode that, like, they were on a time crunch. And number one, the guy didn't get to review the lesson at the end. Number two, some guy that's not even a writer had to throw it together and had like a million different ideas. And they're like, we like that one, and that one. And he combined it into one story. I don't know what happened with this episode.
I don't know what happened with this episode.
But yeah, absolutely nothing to do with the episode. Let's see if we can find anything good in Castle Grayskull about this episode.
By the power of Grayskull, I command the drawbridge. Open!
All right, let's scope out and put our sleuth hats on and try to find something good hanging around Castle Grayskull here. I have a couple tiny ones here. This is a kind of a subtle one, but at the beginning, Skeletor is attacking the palace in a brand new vehicle that we talked about, the Collector. I like the fact that, like he should not, He-Man does not recognize the vehicle or know who is attacking them. It would have been easy for them to say, for him to immediately be like, oh, we're being attacked by Skeletor and his men or whatever. But I thought it was cool that he didn't know, because he shouldn't have known, because it was a brand new vehicle. Yeah. So I like that. And then there was what I thought was a hilarious moment, which also is another reason just why I like Skeletor. At one point, Beastman and him are standing. I don't even remember what they're about to do, but Beastman is in his way, and Skeletor literally elbows him in the stomach like two kids would elbow each other. Elbows Beastman in the stomach and tells him to get out of his way.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious, the way that was animated and the way it looked, because it was like these evil characters just acting like a couple of like junior high kids or something. He just like, boom, elbow to the stomach, get out of my way. And I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I can't find anything else.
For me, I've got 3 of them. Someday you won't order me around, Skeletor.
Little
where
foreshadowing.
Beastman is well, not really foreshadowing, but just Beastman is mumbling to himself, and then Panther is like Skeletor had walked off, but Panther is still standing there, and Panther just roars, and it's like roar goes to Panther, and Beastman shuts up. I love that. It's so funny. I love the fly at the screen moments. There's a scene where Skeletor looks at the view screen and He-Man flies right into it, into the camera. Mm-hmm. It's not just with the fist punch, it's with vehicles and all that kind of... I just love that kind of shot. Mm-hmm. I thought that was so cool. I thought this was funny, but also it kind of made me cringe a bit. Cheerleaders of He-Man, get ready, okay! It's like at the end when all of them are jumping up and down. It was a funny moment, but at the same time, it's like... But that's all I got for good stuff.
Well, that's good, because I think stuff is about to spill out of Snake Mountain.
Hold it, fish face!
All right, be ready, because stuff's spilling out of Snake Mountain all over the place, out the windows, out the doors. My first note, and please don't get me wrong, I really like Stratos. But are Stratos and Ram Man the ambiguously gay duo of the Masters of the Universe? I find it hilarious that they both show up together and they're like, good thing we were in the neighborhood together again, just like the first episode you saw us. Like, what are these two doing all the time together? I'm going to leave that one alone.
Yeah.
I just found it funny that they both showed up randomly.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, but they just randomly both show up together. So far, both times we've seen them, with no explanation as to why they're showing up. Just like, oh, we were walking down the street, heard some commotion, decided to come in. Okay. Man-at-Arms, I will confuse those two names multiple times during this podcast. Man-at-Arms is Rockman. And we go to a scene where he is Rockman laying on like a bed type, almost like a
stretcher,
stretcher type thing, examination bed, so to speak. And Queen Marlena is there, and she alludes to the fact that maybe her Earth knowledge will be able to aid in this situation. I don't know why or what that has to do with anything. She follows that up with saying, "Ooh, maybe my, Earth knowledge or my background on Earth will help out." And then she hits a button. She doesn't do anything.
To hit the red button.
She doesn't investigate. She does what the 3-year-old would have done there. Like, here's a button. I don't know anything about Man-at-Arms stuff, but I'm guessing we can hit this. Like, what did that have to do with your knowledge of Earth? And how in the blazing hell does she know that the effect will be permanent at sundown?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's like, well, we only have until sundown to do this. Like, that was the most forced, like, not like cliffhanger, but like whatever you call it when you throw in something there, like to add to the tension that basically you have a clock ticking. Like, it's like, oh, we want to build some suspense, so we're just going to throw this in there, even though there's no, like, is that what her Earth knowledge told her? She knows when someone turns into a rock, they only have until sundown? Because I didn't learn that living on Earth. Yeah. That was a whole bad sequence there with Queen Marlena.
Yeah.
And again, there's a bunch of mind. I thought it was funny when you said something about swords and sorcery and psychics, because that's the only thing I can think of. Queen Marlena's a psychic because she knows that it's going to turn permanent at sundown. Evil Lynn's a psychic because she sees He-Man or something going off, and she immediately apparently knows that he is going for the fire jewels.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know if she's that smart that she knows that someone is turned into a rock. She knows also that the process is going to turn permanent at sundown, and she knows also that the fire jewels are the only thing that can stop it. Even though He-Man just had to like go to the sorceress or whoever to find that out.
Yeah.
So Evil Lynn's psychic. Then oh, this episode hurts my heart and my soul and my brain. At one point, He-Man needs to go somewhere, and he whistles.
Oh, you're stealing my... Oh, damn it.
I am fully expecting this then to transition, because it just shows He-Man, he whistles. I'm like, oh, it's going to transition to Battle Cat.
Yeah.
Transitions to a machine cruiser thing.
Since you're stealing my second Snake Mountain moment here, what I wrote down was, okay, when He-Man whistles, I thought, as you just said, he was going to, it was for Battle Cat. But the Wind Raider or mini version of it arrives. Since when can people whistle for vehicles? I call BS on this.
Like, I would have settled, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be Battle Cat. I would have settled for a random horse unicorn coming through the forest or something. Like, it was a freaking wind cruiser thing.
Swift Wind is off in another dimension, dude.
Like, what the hell? He just whistled for a machine and it came.
Yes, he did.
Maybe it was T-Bob's cousin. I don't know. Wow. And my final one before I piled the crap too high in Snake Mountain's hallways was kind of what we already mentioned. The lesson at the end of the episode had absolutely nothing to do with the episode. Yeah. Epic fail on that one.
Since you already stole my second note and we already just talked about it, I have two other ones. I have a huge issue with the scene where Skeletor is flying through the air in the vehicle, in the collector. In part of the scene, it seems to me that they are showing him flying away. Like, there's that camera shot of, you know how when He-Man will fly into the camera, and then they'll do another camera shot where they fly out of the camera? You know what I mean? Where they're flying off away from something. In the very next scene, he is still over the palace and turns the stone lion to life. Now, to me, the shot and the camera angles are so wrong, because normally when you see a scene like this, when someone is going to go, again, I know we've referenced many, many things in here. I'm going to go back to Star Wars again. When you see Luke or when you see Biggs or whoever make a turn in an X-Wing, you see them actually turn. You don't see them fly into the camera, fly out of the camera like they're retreating. Because when that image of Skeletor flying away, I thought he was tucking tail and running back to Snake Mountain. I honestly thought he did. And I just cannot buy that scene. And it is a complete what the fuck moment for me because of those camera angles were just so fucked up.
Yeah.
It was just so bad. The other one was, did Skeletor really not see that He-Man put something on the Ray lever? Did he seriously not? I mean, when He-Man steps up after he and Skeletor are fighting, when He-Man steps up, Skeletor looks right at him. Does he really not see him put the little invention that Man-at-Arms came up with on there to neutralize the damn thing? Fail, Skeletor, fail.
I also don't necessarily buy the connection in between. You have fire jewels, you're crushing them to dust, and then it somehow turns into this little tool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very, very, very strange.
I have a feeling that we may hand out a first of a certain type of award here, but maybe not. We will see. Let's get into the awards and rankings.
I sense evil coming closer.
All right, so it's award ceremony time, and I have two. How many do you have?
Any?
I
do, but I know that you said in the beginning of the show that the Havoc staff were for moments that we hated.
Mm-hmm.
The way when I wrote down my notes for this podcast episode was I wrote down Havoc staff notes for stuff that I liked from the bad guys and also stuff that I didn't like from, like, I cued it to the good guys get the power swords, the bad guys get the Havoc staff.
Sorry, it's the first episode. We're still figuring stuff out.
Right. No, I know. But I do have a Havoc staff, and I'm going to give it to Beastman for almost showing a backbone and wanting to backtalk Skeletor. I thought that was really, really cool. We're only 3 episodes in, and you've got one of his evil warriors wanting to, mutiny on the bounty.
Yeah, that was cool.
But that's it.
Okay, so we'll count that as a power sword since it's a good thing.
Okay then.
I have 2. I'm going to give away my first Havoc staff. And I'm going to give that to Queen Marlena. Just for that sequence that she was unfortunately involved with, where she quotes her Earth knowledge and touches a button and then comes up with the fact that he's going to be permanently turned into rock. I call BS on all parts of you, Queen. Not a good moment for you. So enjoy that staff up your... Anyway. Now, I do have a power sword. I think there was an unsung hero in this episode. There was a character that actually had a decent episode that gets lost in the crap that is the rest of the episode. And so I am going to give a power sword out to the one, the only Orko. I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, he plays vital parts in letting people know things when he actually needs to let them know. It's not like he's telling secrets or letting the cat out of the bag. He's actually informing people about stuff when they need to be informed.
He is the exposition, yes.
He's also successfully displaying his magic powers a couple different times in this episode where it actually works. And it's not just used as humor. So I did like Orko in this episode. It didn't really dawn on me right away because I was so thrown off by everything else. But as I thought about it, I was like, well, Orko actually had a good episode. And it's not just me searching for someone that we don't have to give one out. So I didn't have to say anybody was good. But I do think that he stood out as the key character in this episode. Without him, they were kind of screwed.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then we get to our fun ratings. So let's see. The first episode I gave a 4. The second episode I gave a 5. Let's go ahead and give a 1 to this one. 1 Battle Cat for this horrible, colossal piece of dung. It shouldn't be called Colossor Awakes or whatever this episode is called. Colossor Awakes. It should be Colossor Takes a Dump. Anyway, what about you?
Orko has a big O on his chest, and I give no Orko 0. Absolute 0. This episode was just dumb. Like, how can you... Now, I know for a fact that Lou Scheimer and the crew at Filmation had staff writers and freelance writers, but they did have certain staff writers that were on staff to write continuous good stories. But how can you just sit there and have 2 really, one Diamond Ray of Disappearance, really, really great, awesome episode. Teela's Quest, fucking amazing. And then this crap.
It's like everybody else was busy, apparently.
Yeah, apparently so. 0 Orkos for me.
I don't even know how this got cleared. Like, I understand they don't care. They were just, that's what everybody will say. They don't care. They were just in a time crunch. They were trying to pump out episodes, blah, blah, blah. But come on. Yeah. It's not too hard to have somebody say, that's a crappy idea. I know they had people involved that would either clear stories or deny stories. I know people wrote mock-ups for scripts and were either given the green light or the red light on them. Because I've listened to enough interviews with the writers from this time period that usually you would come in with like 3 or 4 scripts and they would say, that one's okay, that one's good, no, we don't like that one. Somebody okayed this, and something went terribly wrong at some point.
Apparently so, yeah.
So that's our thoughts on Colossor Awakes. We're going to take a quick break to give you some goodness. And we'll be back after these messages.
In today's story, Skeletor was looking for a shortcut, a quick way to riches and power. You may know some people like that, always looking for the quick way to get ahead of everybody else. Well, it doesn't work that way. The people who succeed are the ones who work for what they want. So don't be fooled by those who say they have a sure thing. There's always a catch to it. Don't sell yourself short. The right way is the best way. Until later.
Like animation? Come listen to Animation Aficionados.
And if you disagree with us, you could be a guest on a future show.
Available on iTunes, the Zune Market, and animationaficionados.com.
Grab your helmets because it's time to assemble Mask. The Geekcast Radio Network has launched Masked Mayhem with your hosts OptimusSolo and TFG1Mike. This podcast covering all 75 episodes of Mask will feature in-depth analysis of every episode, talk on the toys, and more. Masked Mayhem will run 30 podcast episodes. You can find us in iTunes and on www.geekcastradio.com. Get your spectrums ready as podcasting is the ultimate weapon.
In today's story, I went in search of my mother. I found her, but I also found something else. That the man who had cared for me since I was a baby, who loved me as he would his own daughter, was just as much my father as any parent could be. And so whether they are someone we were born to or whether they chose us to adopt, it doesn't matter. The ones who protect us and teach us and love us, they are the ones we call mother and father. And they deserve the same kind of love from us. Until next time.
Is this thing on? Oh, goody. Why, hello there. It's your dear old Uncle Joker here. I bet you're asking yourself, what could I be possibly doing here of all places? Well, I'm laughing at the fact that this new podcast presented by Geekcast Radio is called Legends of the Dark Knight. Who the heck knew the Bat was so popular? Ugh. Join Steve, Mike, and sometimes Tara for reviews on the greatest DC animated universe cartoon to ever meet Gotham City. So join moi for the talk of the town, or I'll send Captain Clown after you. He gets mighty angry when he doesn't get to have his garbage skull. So put on a nice big smile and join us for the next Geekcast Radio Network podcast, Legends of the Dark Knight.
Soundwave, jam that transmission! Rumble Frenzy, Ravage Rat-Bat, Eject, Operation Interference.
No, there will be no Operation Interference. I am TFG1Mike, and you should be listening to my very first podcast, the TFG1 Podcast. 24 episodes covering the entire U.S. run of the 1984 Transformers cartoon. I also have a few supplemental episodes and an interview with Stan Bush. I bring in guest hosts who will be full-time co-hosts in Steve Megatron and fan of the show now co-host Pecan Court Michael. So check out the TFG1 Podcast. You can find it on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Transform and roll out!
You can now hear the Geekcast Radio Network while on the go with Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher is a free-use and talk mobile app available for your smartphone. And when you download Stitcher to hear Geekcast Radio, you'll have a chance to win money. Downloading is quick and easy. Just find Stitcher in the App Store. During registration, hit the promo code box and enter Geekcast Radio, all one word, to get automatically entered to win $100. The latest episodes of the shows will be waiting for you in your favorites. You'll get access to lots of other amazing shows too. Always available to you on demand, no syncing. It's Stitcher Smart Radio. Don't forget to enter promo code Geekcast Radio when you register.
I love running at this time of the day.
Yeah, me too. Makes me feel close to nature.
The best part is that it's wonderful exercise.
It's the best. Of course, one should check with a doctor before doing any heavy exercise.
Right, and then start off just a little each day.
I sure wish we could tell that to everybody.
I think we just did.
We did?
Say for yourself.
Remember, be good to your body, and it'll be good to you.
Well said, He-Man. Now, I'll race you to the tree.
Okay.
All All right. In the spirit of being new and different and stuff, we're kind of doing something that I've never done with these review shows, which is every time we get done talking about our little group of episodes for the day, we're going to kind of sit back and take a look at the series so far and give our thoughts on what has happened in that time span that is usually 3 episodes. Obviously, these are the first 3 episodes, so it's kind of the first one talking about where the series is in total so far. Like you, I kind of missed that we didn't get a little bit. So, we're 3 episodes in, and I would have liked to see a little more origin story. I know we got a ton of it in the second episode. I would have liked a little bit more in the first episode, or just something else along the way. I know we had, maybe we can fault this 3rd episode for being crappy for not giving us a little bit more, but I kind of got spoiled with that second one. But I'm obviously left so far 3 episodes in. If I'm watching this as a kid, I realize He-Man's the good character. I realize Skeletor's the main bad character. I realize they both have a group of friends. I know a little bit about the characters as far as their powers go. I don't necessarily understand why there is the battle going on. I don't understand what we're battling for. I kind of sense that there's something important about Castle Grayskull and the Sorceress, and that Skeletor wants something about that, but I'm not necessarily 100% clear on the main premise of the show, besides good versus evil, which is obviously classic. I do like the amount of character development we've got. A lot of times people just blanket statement 80s cartoon shows, or, they're just about toys and they don't care about character development and there's no story and there's no continuity. I have been pleasantly surprised at the amount of character development so far.
You've got character development all over the map. Even though Colossor Awakes is not a very good episode, it is a 0-worthy rating episode for me personally. Like I said before, I love the fact that Cringer is scared of his other half.
Yeah.
I love the fact of, the whole storyline of, showing where Teela comes from and her, showing us the viewers her not potential, but her future destiny, and then essentially wiping our memory of it,
We've learned also a lot about the evil warriors. I wish they had a cool name like the Masters. You have the Masters of the Universe, and it's just kind of like the evil warriors, and that's not cool enough. But we've learned a lot about them, not just the merman kind of focus on, but we've got little bits and pieces, and it's not just what their strengths are and why Skeletor likes them. We kind of learn that they're somewhat independent. They report to Skeletor or they answer to Skeletor, but they also can go off on their own and they have their own, agendas. We also learn a little bit. We see little snippets from both Beastman and Evil Lyn so far that they're maybe not 100% loyal, or at least not 100% happy with Skeletor always giving the orders. So we get a lot of development from the henchmen. Maybe not so much from Skeletor yet, but there is a little bits and pieces of character development all over the place. Maybe more so on the other side with Prince Adam than we have with He-Man so far. We get to see a little bit more about Prince Adam's playing a dumb side, going fishing, crashing stuff through walls. We see his incompetence, so to speak. And not so much with He-Man, but like I said, I can give him a break on He-Man and Skeletor for a little while.
The thing with He-Man is he is there to be the champion. He is there to be the hero. He is there to, like in, again, Teela's Quest, when, was it Orko, I think, asked him why did he save Merman? Mm-hmm. Because he said, even though we may not like a person, they still, deserve to be saved and not destroyed, or whatever it was that he said. It was a good, believable.
That was probably the most character development we got from there, was to see his more of his ethical, moral compass.
Yeah, exactly.
The only minor thing that I kind of had a nitpick on, maybe, I guess, as the series so far, is I felt like it's been too quick or too early into the episode in which Adam has transitioned to He-Man. And obviously there's a lot of episodes, and I'm sure this doesn't carry on, but if I'm just basing it off of these 3 episodes, it's like within the first couple minutes it seems like he's already going into He-Man. And so as it moves forward, I'm hoping that we get a little bit sometimes more drawn out, or sometimes it's more prolonged, as we see Adam not necessarily needing He-Man right away, or not being able to do. I don't want it immediately every time.
I don't. I hate to disappoint you. I don't think that's going to happen because as soon as Skeletor or whoever will attack the palace or will attack Grayskull,
well, or even just a little more
Adam's
switching
gonna
back and
run
forth or something.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is like you say you get. All right, let's use Teela's quest. Let's say instead of Teela finding out about her, wanting to find out about her stuff, let's say Marlena takes the thing off, and as soon as she does that, Skeletor attacks. Adam is instantly going to run away and become He-Man because he has to keep up that persona of Adam's a fucking coward. He doesn't know how to do shit because He-Man is the hero. So I honestly, I understand what you want and I understand what you'd like to see. I'm just telling you right now, I have a feeling that it's not.
Well, the other thing that could happen is it could take a little bit longer. Like so far, we've had a couple different times where it's just like within the first 5 minutes, someone is attacking the palace. Like maybe we could have a plot where the bad guys are going to develop something a little bit more covertly, or where they're going to be doing something away from the palace to something else, where it's not necessary for him to do it right away. I get the point that he has to do it right away but maybe something a little bit more drawn out from the strategy of the evil characters.
Yeah. I think the only time this ever really happens, to my knowledge, and I don't remember what episode it is. I might not even be. It would have to be here. It would have to be in He-Man. It wouldn't be in She-Ra. There's an episode somewhere in this series where Skeletor kidnaps Adam.
Yeah.
Now that is probably where you're going to get your he can't transform, blah blah blah.
But don't ruin it for us, people. Let us watch it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
No, I know. I'm saying that to the people that are going to be like, well, you're going to see it in episode 13, 18, and 26. No, don't tell me that.
Yeah. Don't skip ahead of us, people.
Let us all go on this venture together.
Yes.
So those are my kind of thoughts on the series so far. What's through 3 episodes, where are you sitting with things?
In the back of my mind, I know it's a serialized cartoon where we're going to get individual stories, whether they be continuity driven like Teela's quest is with her backstory, or whether they're going to be one-offs like Colossor. But overall, I'm really excited. I'm really loving watching the series again. As I said in Diamond Ray of Disappearance, those classic moments that I remember from my childhood will make me tear up every time because it makes me remember my childhood.
This through 3 episodes, this is not even an ounce of as painful as Mask was.
No, not at all.
Sorry, Mask fans.
Not at all. And again, for me, I don't know about you, but I've always said that for me with Mask and with, I always remember seeing it in passing as a kid. I remember the theme song and I remember the team up sequence. Other than that, as far as plots and Mask, I don't remember anything. As far as outside of those moments I just mentioned, I don't remember anything as a kid watching it. This I remember because this I watched every single day as a kid.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right. So thanks for not viewing. Thanks for listening to our first chapter of Tales of Eternia. If you'd like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, there are, of course, several ways to do so. First of all, and foremost of all, visit our website, www.geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on all of our posts, but specifically you can find our Tales of Eternia post, and I'm sure there will be conversations going on there. You can take a part of that, comment, question, correct us, whatever. You can tell us what we're doing right or what you like or what you don't like. You can do a lot of stuff over at geekcastradio.com. If you'd rather do it by email, you can send us email to feedback@geekcastradio.com. If you want to be awesome, then go to iTunes, please, and leave us feedback. Because what we will do is we will read that feedback on the air, and we will love you forever. So leave us feedback in iTunes. Follow us on Twitter. The main Twitter there is Geekcast Radio. Yours is...
TFG1Mike.
Mine is OptimusSolo. If you're going to do something, make sure you put my name in the thing, or else I will never see it. Become a fan of us on Facebook. Search out Geekcast Radio Network. Do we have a voicemail line right now?
502-526-5821. Be sure to tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name.
Excellent. So we hope you enjoyed the first chapter of Tales today. And don't forget to join us on our next adventure when we will be discussing episodes 4, 5, and 6, which are The Dragon Invasion, The Curse of the Spellstone, and The Time Corridor. For now, I'm OptimusSolo with
TFG1Mike.
And by the powers of Grayskull, you all have the power.
What kind of bag of worms have we opened up? Oh my god, the He-Man community is going to come after us so hard.